Today I've flown all the way out to southern Sweden to take a look at the refreshed Volvo XC90. This is the best-selling Volvo in the United States and the second best-selling luxury three-row in America. So let's talk about what's new and what has not changed for this model year. In my estimation, the XC90 is the most important product in Volvo's long and storied history. It's one of their best-selling models in North America, it's the second bestseller in its segment, and whether we're talking about the first generation XC90, the second generation XC90, or now the refresh of the second gen XC90, it has helped redefine what a Volvo looks and feels like on the inside and outside. The first XC90 was of course Volvo's first SUV. The second generation model, that really set the benchmark for interior refinement, especially in modern Volvos, and it helped put Volvo back on luxury car shoppers' lists in North America. Because until this generation debuted, Volvo's interiors were often considered sort of second tier in the luxury segment. Not quite as fancy, not quite as luxurious as some of the German options, but the XC90, it simply has one of the best interiors in the segment. Over the years that this generation XC90 has been on sale, it has really defied traditional sales trajectory logic, because the XC90 is having one of its best sales years ever, even though it has never been older in this generation. And that's exactly why Volvo decided to refresh it rather than redesign it. This is not related to the new Volvo EX90. So for this model year, Volvo has two different three-row SUVs to choose from. This is available with a traditional gasoline engine or as a plug-in hybrid, whereas the EX90 is full electric with over 300 miles of range. The EX90 also gets all of Volvo's latest safety systems, tech on the inside, features, gadgets, gizmos, etc., whereas the XC90 in its refreshed form adopts some of those systems, but the core of the vehicle remains the same. So you'll notice we don't have the big LiDAR bump right there above the windshield because we don't get that function in the XC90. But up front we get redesigned headlights. These are the active matrix headlights that we're seeing working their way across the Volvo lineup. And most notably, we get a redesigned grille and a redesigned front bumper. Let me know what you think of the look down there in the comments section. I think this works really, really well for the XC90. I've been driving around here in southern Sweden where you see a lot of Volvos, especially XC90s, and this definitely looks new and fresh in comparison. As you'd expect with this being a refresh, not a redesign, the general dimensions of the XC90 remain the same, as does the general profile. And I think that's fine, because Volvo's designs have proved to be pretty timeless lately, and that definitely applies to the XC90. I like the relatively upright proportions, the subtle amount of chrome, and of course Volvo has a good wheel game going as well. If you want more room on the inside, especially of your plug-in hybrid, you don't have too many options. You have the Lexus TX. It is finally back on sale in North America. Of course, we have the Acura MDX, which is the best seller in this segment. But the MDX doesn't have as much power as the Volvo, and of course, it doesn't have a plug-in hybrid available. And I think those are two key reasons why sales of the XC90 keep growing, and sales of the MDX, some years they've been a little bit soft. When it comes to product updates, Volvo goes about things a little bit differently than their competitors. Instead of selling basically the same vehicle for 4 to 5 years, giving it a massive refresh, and selling that same identical vehicle for another 4 to 5 years, Volvo will make changes on a much more regular basis. So exactly how changed this XC90 is versus that one you might have in your garage is going to depend on exactly how old that other XC90 is. Because since this model first launched, or I should say this generation first launched, they've made some pretty significant changes to the engine lineup, the plug-in hybrid system, and of course the exterior styling. Versus last year though, the exterior styling is a little bit more of a modest change, I would say. So the deletion of the exhaust tips, that happened some time ago. The new taillights, those are definitely new for this year. Under the hood, we find basically the same engine lineup that we had last year. Things are going to start with the B5 drivetrain that gives you just under 250 horsepower. There's the mid-level B6 drivetrain, which gives you just under 300 horsepower, or the absolutely bonkers T8 plug-in hybrid system that gives you a whopping 455 horsepower, thanks to a pretty big electric motor on the rear axle. We also get a battery that has a capacity of just over 18 kilowatt hours, giving this a solid amount of electric driving range. The average American should be able to do their daily commute in electric-only operation, especially thanks to that bigger electric motor in the back. The electric motor in the back is good for about 155 horsepower, and that's certainly enough to get this going out on the highway and keep it going even at higher highway speeds. If you're interested in a really large cargo area, you're going to need to look at a larger luxury SUV. But the actual storage space behind the third row or with the third row folded is substantially similar to the Acura MDX. You will get notably more room in the Lexus TX, but still not quite enough for maybe a family of 4 to really take a weekend away. You can see we have 2 people's luggage right back here. 2 big bags, of course, because we've gone a little bit of a distance here, camera bags, etc. It's a reasonable amount of storage space in the back. So far today, I have found these seats just a little bit more comfortable than the seats that we find in the new EX90. The general design is the same as before, but as you can see, we get different upholstery colors, different stitching, of course, as well. These seats have Volvo's active massage feature. We have the extending thigh cushion there. And if we hop into the second row, we find, of course, one of the Volvo unique features, which is the integrated child booster cushion right there in the center seat. Since this is the plug-in hybrid model, we have the battery pack right there between the front seats. Volvo says that's the safest place for it, but that does mean that we lose a little bit of legroom for that center passenger if you want a center passenger there. We have the 4-zone climate control in this particular model. Again, the updated interior colors. Lots and lots of open pore wood trim going all the way around the interior. And then this model has the well-integrated rear shades. Let's just go ahead and hop up front because the bigger change in here is found in the center of the dash. I'll go ahead and start. We still have the same toggle there, same sort of crystal shifter, but we now have basically the same infotainment software as the EX90 on a slightly smaller screen. I think this screen actually works really well with this interior. If you recall, the previous screen was set into the dashboard a little bit more, so they had to redesign this center area to accommodate the bigger screen, and they felt this was about as big as you could logically put in this interior. The rest of the dashboard, it's basically the same. So we get a fabric insert right there, leather up top, lots more real wood trim there. We get a power release for a pretty big glove compartment, memory seats for the passenger as well as the driver, and this one has the optional Bowers & Wilkins audio system. We get some upgraded speaker grills there, or I should say updated because the quality feels about the same. And we get lots more soft touch materials than we find in some of the mid-level like Buick or Acura competitors. So the dashboard down here, this is all a soft touch material, but we still have some hard plastics down there at the bottom of the door. This model also, of course, has the big panoramic moonroof that goes to just about the second row passengers' heads. You can see lots and lots of room there. We get height adjustable shoulder belts for the driver, front passenger, and the second row as well. But let's get back to the screen in the middle of the dash, because again, this is one of the major changes for this model year. This is still running the Android operating system, so you have access to the Google Play Store where you can download things like a car fireplace if you wanted to do that. You can hit this button here for the apps. You can see that transitions are pretty snappy. We have Waze built in if you want to do that. Vehicle settings, car status, that's where you can find things like your tire pressure, service information, that sort of stuff. You tap this little home button there to get back to the home screen, and you can tap it again if you want to minimize the widgets down there towards the bottom. The widgets are a little bit customizable. We also have drive modes there as a widget that takes you over to, for instance, the hybrid drive mode, since we're in the plug-in hybrid system. And you can have the air suspension automatically lower itself when you're parked for easier access, since we do have that option as well. Now, we also have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto here. So if I move over to our Apple CarPlay screen and unlock my phone. With my phone unlocked, you can see we have a large vertical implementation of CarPlay. I think that the smartphone integration is actually one of the big benefits of having this bigger screen. But of course, we also have the big native Google mapping interface with lots of satellite imagery. It's a really snappy system. Keep in mind that the satellite imagery is downloading over a cellular connection, so it actually is pretty snappy as far as its operation, and that has continually improved over the time that Volvo has been using that system. Moving up from there, we have the Bowers & Wilkins center channel speaker. Of course, we have the head-up display there, and we have this big full LCD instrument cluster. The LCD instrument cluster does not really see the same changes that we see in the EX90. I was actually curious about that. We do have the ability for your CarPlay routing to be shown here in this screen, but the core of this screen itself, it remains the same as before, and I would love to have seen maybe a few more changes as far as that software goes. Now, moving out from there, we have the Volvo round steering wheel. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to get that whole steering wheel in frame, but this is not the updated wheel that we find in the EX90. I actually think that's a bit better because these controls seem a little bit more logical to me. We don't, however, have a powered tilt telescopic steering column, something that we do find in the EX90. That's probably one of the few things I would love to see on this model. I also think a stitched leather airbag cover could be kind of cool. But the stalks and controls, those are all basically the same as other Volvo models, and we still have 4 window switches. So they didn't delete window switches like we find in the EX90. Moving back to the center console, we have a Qi wireless charging mat, large enough for some of those larger smartphones, and then we have this roller shade style cover over the big cup holders there. You can see that the Volvo key, that's basically unchanged, so buttons are still there on the side. The engine start stop button there, auto brake hold, and because we're in the plug-in hybrid model, a relatively small storage area beneath that center armrest. And that's again because the battery is located right under there. All right, let's get the XC90 out on the road. I have hopped in a B5 model, which is the least powerful version of the XC90 for this. And in the right seat next to me is Clint from Edmunds.
How we doing,
So, you know, let's let everybody know, where can they find you?
On the Edmunds Cars YouTube channel and in written form on Edmunds.com.
All the Edmunds.
Yeah.
So we spent the first part of the day in the XC90 T8 plug-in hybrid. Volvo says, though, that probably the biggest change that everybody should know about is the cabin quietness.
So far, I don't disagree with them.
Yeah, this is noticeably quieter, I think, than the previous model. We have winter tires, though, on these.
That's right.
Of course, it's required here at this time of year. But I have to say that that was the one area where Volvo needed to do a little bit of work. Right now, with this the nav system, we need to...
You got it over there, too. Yeah, we're a little upside down right now, both in time zone and map.
We've been running on a little sleep here, a little lack of sleep. 0 to 60 time. What does Volvo quote this one as?
Oh, we put him on the spot. 7.7.
7.7. That's what it says in the spec sheet.
That was 0 to 100 kph though. So.
Okay, 0 to 62.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, we're not going to do any 0 to 60 testing in small town Sweden, where there are lots of speed cameras.
Yeah.
So none of that here. Performance, though, should be largely similar to the outgoing model, right? Because the engine's the same, basically. The plug-in hybrid system is essentially the same as well, which also means that if you want one of the fastest 0 to 60 times in this segment, you know, Volvo's the one you should go for.
That's right, which is a weird thing to say, but it's accurate.
Now, how would you think this should be compared against something like an X5? Because the closest thing in format, this is kind of between X5 and X7, to be honest.
No, that's true. I mean, X5 is for somebody who wants the car to handle and perform better. The plug-in version of this does have an adequate amount of power, but the way you interact driving this car, this is a leisurely pace grand tour. You put this thing on the highway, load it up with kids, and you're having a very easygoing time. Taking it around corners fast is not what it's good at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing I would say, though, is, and the trouble I have, in a way, is this segment is weird. Because the best seller is the MDX, which, yeah, it has super handling all-wheel drive, but it's not an M5 or an X5.
I would have this over an MDX, would you?
I would take the Volvo over an MDX easily, but I would have to have the budget for it.
Yeah.
Because this is much nicer than the Acura inside. I think the design is more pleasing to my eye.
Beautiful.
The materials feel significantly more premium than the Acura or the Lexus, but, you know, the price tag is more premium as well.
Yeah, because it starts like just under 60 or so for the base version of the car, and then you want to dress it up with the nice stuff. Bowers & Wilkins is a great option, among other things. And
this is a good example of you know, the pricing ladder, because this one is the 247 horsepower. Am I getting that number right?
I can check it if you want me to.
Just under 250. That's what we should say.
Yeah, that's about right.
And of course, you can get this up to fairly high price points because you can get all of the stuff that you would expect in a Volvo. Wood trim, the nicer seats, etc. You can get all of that in the B5 engine drivetrain, but you're gonna get a lot less power than you'll find standard in that MDX.
Yep.
And I don't know, is the interior worth it to you to have less power?
Yes.
Okay.
I really think so. I mean, this is a very well-built, well-designed car. You were commenting earlier, the outside, they could have maybe done some more to make this look different from the previous generation, but they didn't really have to. XC90 has always looked pretty decent and very modern.
Exactly. And the one thing that they did change majorly on the on the vehicle for especially the non-air suspension equipped model is the new dampers. And I will agree, I think they do feel better out here. Some of these less perfect road surfaces, the speed bumps there, potholes, etc. It doesn't have that sort of brittle feel that the previous model had. I also think, though, it's the sound deadening that's going to be more important to people.
Yeah, and out of all the buzzy 4-cylinders in the world, this one is not that bad. It really is kind of nice, and we were laying into the engine earlier, and it's not nearly as intrusive as it could be. So I think they've done a really good job handling that.
And I think for people that haven't driven an XC90 in a while, it's important for them to know that this is not the same exact 4-cylinder engine that this generation launched with. Volvo has tweaked things over time. They've changed the turbos, the power level. They've added some extra sound deadening, extra foam on the engine itself and between the engine and the passenger compartment. So it really definitely sounds more refined, I guess is the right word.
They're good at making 4-cylinders at this point, as they should. They stick it in everything.
Exactly.
So.
And this is much smoother to my ear than the Lexus 2.4.
Oh my God, all day long. I'm 100% with you.
But not as snazzy sounding as the MDX's V6.
That's true. Yeah, you do lose out on that, and there are some out there who prefer 6 or obviously 8 cylinders in their 3-row SUV. Not going to find it here.
Yeah. We do have a nice 8-speed automatic transmission, though. That feels good. Handling's definitely acceptable. T8, bonkers power, and of course 27 miles per gallon. Hard to go wrong there. Now, what else would you wish, if you could wish a wish list of EX90 things onto the XC90, what would you want? Because I think I would want a power steering column.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. That's low-hanging fruit. That would dress this up a little bit. I can get down the rabbit hole of I wish it had the LiDAR and the sophisticated stuff that EX90 gets, and maybe be a little bit more future-proofing with the hardware on this car, but I don't think that's in the cards just yet. The next-gen, driver assistant stuff. I'm
torn on that one because I would love to see the LiDAR, but the LiDAR in the EX90 doesn't really do anything for us yet.
It's just like a hood ornament right now, but hypothetically in 3, 5, who knows how many years.
It has the promise.
It has the promise, and they'll get you with that.
But I do think the window switches here, way better than EX90 because we actually have 4 of them on the driver's side.
That is a nice touch. Turns out people want to roll down their windows.
And I don't know about you, but for some reason, the aesthetics, even though they are both very clearly Volvo, both very clearly in the family, they didn't just go out and reinvent a new interior. I think this interior actually looks better to my eye for some reason.
That's a testament to how well they design a vehicle. You would know better than me. How old is XC90? I forget these days.
I believe this model launched as a 2016 in North America.
So when you take that under consideration, I can think of many cars that first came out in 16 that look and feel old. This does not. As a baseline to start from, it still feels very modern. And the way they kind of just stuck this tablet atop where the tinier screen used to be and kind of just covered their tracks, not the worst.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think if I had another wish list, that might be better integrated in the dash. I think
totally
maybe a bigger hump or something there. But I'm actually okay with it. I don't think that's objectionable. They redesigned the air vents, and I like these better than the air vents we had before. They're a little bit bigger. It's such a pleasing place to spend your time.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And the design changes they have made, these material pieces, the different wood trim, I mean, it does feel like stereotype here, but you went in and chose the nicest things out of IKEA and placed them neatly in a row.
That's true, yeah.
And you built yourself a Volvo dashboard. What do you think about the difference between the air suspension in the PHEV versus the different damper?
I was definitely team air suspension before the refresh because the ride quality in the regular steel spring model I always felt was just a little bit too harsh, a little bit too firm. But I think this tweak has made me think maybe you could save some cash without being offended. The air suspension is obviously going to cost more to maintain long term, so that is a bit of a bummer. And now I would say the ride quality difference is much smaller than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm all over it. I think they made some nice changes with this. They were talking to us earlier about the changes that they made with the damper, and it's the right thing. It was the right move.
Yeah, it's exactly the right move. So I think there it is. Our bottom line out on the road is, if you liked it before, you'll love the refinements. If you weren't exactly an XC90 fan to begin with for whatever reason, it's probably not going to change any minds.
Yeah, and if you wrap yours in gold, please let me know, because I'd like to see it.
Yeah, but it hasn't turned into an MDX, which I think is actually good. And it hasn't turned into an X5 either.
No, it is not.
So what do you think? Did Volvo do enough to update the XC90? Should they have given us a gasoline EX90, or should they have grafted some EX90 into the XC90? Remember, this is completely unrelated, although it does borrow basically the infotainment software from that brand new Volvo 3-row. Now, speaking of 3-rows, I like the format and the size of the XC90. It has an occasional use third row. I wouldn't exactly call that a full-time use third row. It's a little bit small, but neither is the third row in the MDX. Yes, the Lexus TX has a more accommodating third row, but if you really put people back there all the time, I'd probably want to go for a full-size SUV in the luxury segment. That's going to be a lot harder to park, a lot less efficient. There's no plug-in hybrid version, etc. For this T8 model, the only real competition is the Lexus TX plug-in hybrid. The interior is not nearly as nice, the drivetrain is not nearly as powerful, the fuel economy and the power combo that we get here, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Big reason, of course, to buy this over the MDX is that plug-in hybrid system. I think that's why so many XC90s are actually being sold as a plug-in hybrid. In California and a number of other states in the US, almost half or over half of the sales volume, depending on the month, have been the bonkers 455 horsepower plug-in hybrid system. Because this is the kind of drivetrain that lets you have your cake and eat it too. You get better performance than an Acura MDX with fuel economy that is almost as good as a Lexus hybrid, and a lot more personality involved as well. I think more timeless styling inside and outside, hugely comfortable cabin, and maybe that is one of the reasons to get this over the EX90. I think, to be honest, I actually prefer the cabin styling in the XC90 to the new EX90. And I do prefer little things like these seat controls, these window switches, etc. The steering wheel controls, these are my favorite versus the XC90. That's going in a different direction, a little bit more tech forward, a little bit more button minimalist than we find in the XC90. But this, I think, has that just right balance. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. And would you get this or an Acura MDX or a Lexus TX if you're shopping in this segment? And of course, again, did Volvo do enough with the mild exterior refresh and the mild interior refresh, or should they have gone a bit more aggressive? Let me know what you think down there, and I'll see all of you next week.